legislative affairs on Capitol Hill, logistics management, and facilities management. Colonel Green began as a tank platoon leader and support platoon leader in Germany that included a combat tour in Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm in 1991. Colonel Green earned a master's degree in strategic planning from the Army School of Advanced Military Studies and a master's degree in general administration from Central Michigan University. He was also the distinguished honor graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School and the U.S. Army Jungle Operations courses, as well as the recipient of the Draper Leadership Award. Colonel Green was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army after graduation from West Point in 1987. His wife, Tara, is also a West Point graduate. Their two oldest sons are presently cadets at West Point.
Well, thank you, Maddie. I appreciate that introduction and for serving as our Master of Ceremony today. So today is a celebration. It's a celebration of our veterans' decision to serve their country. And so in my mind, the best way to start any celebration is with a thunderclap. Oh, you don't know what a thunderclap is? Okay, we'll practice one. Practice one. Okay, you ready? It goes like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that was like a B minus. B minus, it's okay. Come on, class of 2021, right? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's A+ work right there. Okay. So for our student volunteers, for Maddie Spencer, Aubriana, Julia, Katie, Zach, and Cooper. 1, 2, 3. For our student singers later in the ceremony, Sarah, David, and Catherine. 1, 2, 3. For our junior class and the members of the National Honor Society and all the bears that are here. 1, 2, 3. For Dr. Scoder, without whom this event would not happen, and certainly not without such fanfare. 1, 2, 3. For our school board members, our principal Lisa Smith, our faculty and staff for all they do for us every day. 1, 2, 3. We also have with us today some members of our ROTC, the much feared Green Terror Battalion is here with us. 1, 2, 3. And of course, last but certainly not least, we have veterans with us here, as mentioned. It spans over 80 years, one of which is from as far away as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So for them, 1, 2, 3. Good morning. And what an absolutely beautiful morning for a celebration of service to the United States of America. Each class of cadets at West Point chooses a class motto during their first summer to capture why they made the decision to serve their country. That motto is then emblazoned on their class ring, and I dare say in their hearts forever. Some examples of these class mottos: serve with integrity, 1970. Courage never quits, 1986. Till duty is done, 2001. Perhaps one of my favorite West Point class mottos, though, is more recent. For the class of 2017, these young men and women chose the motto, so others may dream, 2017. Let's think about that for a minute. 1,200 young people who joined the class of 2017 were about 5 years old when that terrible day on September 11, 2001 occurred. And they grew up in a country that effectively was in conflict around the globe, but in particular in Iraq and Afghanistan. Every one of those cadets knew upon joining their class at West Point that it was likely they would deploy somewhere dangerous in service of their country. Further, they decided that their creed, their reason why, would be so others may dream, 2017. Many of our veterans with us here today were also 17 years old when they decided to serve. Several veterans seated here today were so young that their first decision was to ask their mom and dad to sign a waiver that permitted them to even talk to a recruiter about joining the Army, the Navy, or the Marine Corps. One told me that that was the hardest decision of all, to convince his mother to sign that piece of paper, knowing full well that he was off to World War II. But that decision to serve may not have occurred at the moment you walk into the recruiting station, or you decide to join ROTC, or you show up at the military academy, the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, and the like. But I guarantee you that decision does become a decision to serve the moment that you're in uniform, You face discomfort, danger, insurmountable challenges, or loneliness. And at that moment, you put yourself last and you decide that your teammates, your unit, the mission at hand, and your country come first. That's the decision to serve. Today is a special day. Amidst our hectic lives, our full schedules, and our ever-present blaring social media, today we have giants seated among us. Right here in the first 4 or 5 rows, we have over 60 veterans in our audience today, and as you heard earlier, it spans over 80 years of service. Their history is not just in books or something you might write a paper about, although I do encourage you to write history papers. No, their history is the story of their lives and the story of their sacrifice. Over the past several weeks, I've had the honor and joy of interviewing some of these giants of American history. Here are their stories. Mr. Charles Welch, or Chuck as you know him, served us in the United States Navy for over 22 years. Chuck, are you here? Probably in class. You know him as a dedicated teacher. We know him as Senior Chief Petty Officer. Following his specialty schooling in the Great Lakes, he served during the Vietnam War aboard the USS Kearsarge, flying with the Grumman S-2G surveillance aircraft. As the Navy transitioned to a new aircraft, the S-3 Viking, he became an expert in the mission, spending parts of 2 decades preparing himself and his unit to be ready for war if it were to come. This included 7 tours of duty in the Mediterranean and the Western Pacific. By 1990 and 1991, the Gulf War did come. He was the senior weapons systems operator for the Viking aboard the USS Roosevelt aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. When I asked Chuck of his fondest memory of service, he said, "Our unit showed its worth in the Gulf War." Those years of 9-month deployments at sea, those dozens of missed birthdays, and those tough goodbyes with his kids seemed to be worth it. He had his unit ready when this country needed it most, and he made a difference. I know he made a difference because I was one of those guys on the ground in Iraq and Saudi Arabia for whom his unit paved the way in the air. Well done, Mr. Welch. Thank you personally, and thank you from your nation. We're lucky to have you at Oakdale. Mr. Brian Smith. Smitty, are you here? Yeah, he's probably taking care of something for us. We all know him as Smitty. He served in the U.S. Navy during the Cold War from 1985 to 1989. You know him because he's our lead maintenance tech here, he takes care of the campus here at Oakdale. After boot camp in Orlando, Florida, he served as a second-class petty officer, electrician's mate, aboard the Jason AR-8. In addition to his specialties as an electrician, he served as the engine room switchboard operator and a fire team member when underway at sea. This remarkable ship was home to over 2,800 sailors, and it served as a repair tender to keep the fleet of ships operational. By 1989, he was on the oldest continuously operating ship in the U.S. Navy. So picture the Oakdale football field afloat. This is the Jason AR-8 with 2,800 people aboard. And as he recalled, he was deep under the decks in the engine room of a 50-year-old ship in the Western Pacific, and it was very, very hot. Now you see, the Jason AR-8 had this communications tower. It stands about as tall as one of the lights in the Bear football stadium. So it's 40 or 50 feet tall. And that communication tower had a safety light on top so that airplanes wouldn't run into it. That light goes out at the top. The ship had to stop operating. They could no longer perform their mission or be underway. Well, guess what? Light went out. Who's going to the top? I'm gonna wait for hands here. Who's going to the top of a 40-foot tower on a Jason AR-8 afloat in the middle of the Western Pacific when it's moving left and right, approaching a typhoon? Any volunteers? Anybody? Well, Smitty did. Smitty took that on. It was one of his most memorable times in the Navy. He knew the duty needed him to do it. He took his one safety strap and up he went while 2,800 people watched and waited. That's bravery. We're indebted to Smitty for that. Now that I've learned at least a small part of the rest of Smitty's story, it helps me understand why this Bear family loves him so much. When I mention Smitty's name to parents, teachers, or you, to a person, they tell me how incredible he is. I guess by comparison, taking care of us at Oakdale must seem easy compared to servicing a ship underway in the Pacific during a typhoon. Smitty, wherever you are, thank you for your service, the time you spent away from your loved ones while serving. Thank you for your bravery to accomplish the mission and for your example to these students every day of what right looks like. Round of applause for Smitty, please. Mr. Benjamin Zamosny, or Mr. Z. Mr. Z here. Where's he at? Where's he at? Oh, he's over in the band. You saw him before. You at least saw his back. Mr. Z served the United States Marine Corps from 1998 to 2002 as a musician for the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force Band. He was only 17 years old when he was inspired by the Marine Corps Band, the Commandant's Own in Washington, D.C. He too was too young to join, so he required his mother's signature to enlist. Luckily, she agreed. That decision to serve led Mr. Z to become a Marine rifleman, because every Marine is a rifleman first, and then to represent the Corps and the United States across the Pacific Eastern Theater in places like Saipan, Australia, and Micronesia, and at the 50th anniversary of the victory at Iwo Jima on Mount Suribuchi. For thousands of people across the world, their enduring image and memory of America is from the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force Band. They were fit, precise, prepared, and inspirational. Following 9/11, Mr. Z found himself at Rocky Point, New York. He and his fellow Marines began the process for many New Yorkers, shaken by the events of that terrible day, to rebuild their spirit, indeed recover the national spirit through the power of music. Mr. Z, we're thankful for your decision to take your talent and passion for music and give it as a gift to your nation. It's evident to me that Z is justifiably proud to have earned the title of Marine, and we're thankful and lucky that he is among us here at Oakdale. Let's hear it for Mr. Z. Miss Marilyn Sandler. Marilyn served as a nurse in the United States Army from June of 1945 until June of 1947. Her passion for service, however, preceded the start of the war, as she started nursing school in early 1941 in the hope of serving others. Nursing is a profession in and of itself that is born of the servant's heart, and this is so true for Marilyn. When many of her nursing school friends went to serve in civilian hospitals, she joined the Army and served to the end of the war as a 2nd lieutenant at Fort Meade here in Maryland. She cared for countless soldiers who returned from World War II with severe physical and mental wounds. In her words, these people were suffering, and I knew I could help. I always felt as though I was doing something worthwhile. Ma'am, indeed your service was life-saving, and worthwhile only begins to describe your impact. It was a pleasure to be with you, and thank you on behalf of those that you healed and comforted from our nation and from all of us. Thank you. On the early morning of 2 September 1945, the Japanese surrendered the Allied powers aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. What was anticipated as the loss of 1 million American lives was averted with the surrender of the Japanese that day. But the USS Missouri was not alone in Tokyo Bay. In September and October of 1945, over 250 American ships arrived in the bay for the surrender and occupation of a defeated Japan. Mr. Bert Sikowitz, are you here, sir? Bert, good morning. Bert was the first to arrive in Tokyo Bay aboard the Horace A. Bass APB-124, a high-speed transport ship. Another Siemens second-class electrician, where's Smitty? Oh yes, he's there. He had the same rate as Smitty. Bert was another 17-year-old who received his parents' signature, graduated high school, and reported to upstate New York for training. In 18 short months, he completed boot camp in the freezing cold of New York, training in Detroit, joined the Horace Bass in Norfolk, Virginia, a short training stint to Bermuda to attain combat certification before deploying to the Western Pacific. But first, off to Boston, where the ship refueled and prepared for war, and then hooray. They stopped in Brooklyn, New York City, unexpectedly. Why hooray? Because Bert's from New York City. And he was 15 minutes from his mom and dad's house. A kind-hearted chief gave him liberty and a subway right away, and his mom and dad received the surprise of their life when Bert appeared in uniform on their front porch. His mom almost had a heart attack, but it was not long before he was back on the ship and they were underway, down through the Panama Canal to San Diego, and then to refit at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, resupply at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Much like Smitty, Bert served in the engine room, where it was very, very hot. Bert's ship then saw action, escorting ships between Okinawa and Saipan. In July 1945, the Horace Bass was attacked by a Japanese kamikaze plane. Just after midnight, Bert was relieved of duty when the attack struck the engine room where he had been just a few hours earlier. He asked that I note that we lost 20 very brave men that day. Bert stayed with the Horace Bass for 6 months after the surrender aboard the USS Missouri, before literally filling the Horace Bass up with service members and returning them to San Francisco. Bert enjoyed serving his country and considered himself lucky to have done so. I assure you, sir, that we were the lucky ones who have someone like you volunteer at the age of 17 and go into harm's way on our behalf. Thanks, sir. But in a twist of fate, Bert was not the only one from our audience aboard a ship in Tokyo Bay in September, October of 1945. Mr. Ernie Brightman was there too, aboard the aircraft carrier USS Puget Sound. Sir, there's Ernie and Clara right here in the third row. Good morning. Hailing from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Ernie wanted to decide his own fate. He wanted desperately to be a Marine and to fly airplanes. He talked his mom into signing the papers so he could join the Marine Corps. There was a big issue, or a small issue. Bert was too skinny. So after a month, this is a true story, after a month of eating bananas, he tipped the scale and was off to basic training in San Diego to earn the coveted Globe and Anchor, the Marine Corps emblem. Soon he had earned the rate of Marine Corporal and the immense responsibility as a crew chief for one of the Marine Corps' newest airplanes, the so-called Turkey. Well, Ernie, I did a little research and we talked earlier. The Turkey was in fact the Avenger dive bomber, but because of its great size and its collapsible wings, so it would fit on the aircraft carrier, it gained an inauspicious nickname. Ernie was responsible for the operation of the plane and preparing it for combat with the pilot, Captain Miggins. His greatest memory, aboard the USS Puget Sound, he arrived in Hong Kong and then to Tokyo Bay. His greatest memory was when the Marine Corps selected him to be a corporal and gave him responsibility for his own plane. It was a sign of unwavering trust by a Marine Corps that he loved and he had dreamed of serving. I'd join the Marine Corps all over again, he told me. I was proud to have made it through the toughest training anyone could receive. Mr. Brighton is joined today by his wife of 63 years, Clara. Morning, Clara. Thank you for being here. He's also joined by 3 grandchildren, a senior here at Oakdale, Caitlin, and 2 freshmen, Kayla and Ryan, and his daughter-in-law, Kathleen. I know you all are justifiably proud of your grandma and grandpa. Mr. Brightman Ernie, you're an American hero. And we're honored that you would come all the way down from Pittsburgh to celebrate service with us today. As an Army officer of 30 years, dare I say, Semper Fi. Round of applause for Ernie and his family. Mr. Buck Isaacs, Buck Isaacs, just to the left of Team Brightman. Buck served in the U.S. Army as a tank mechanic for the 70th Armored Battalion. His path to defeat Nazi Germany reads like a history book in and of itself. Although he summarized his time in the Army by saying, "Do you know that I got an all-expense-paid trip to Europe and spent 2 full years of my life sleeping on the ground?" Think about that for a minute. 99 years old and 2 years on the ground in Africa and Europe. Enlisting in the Army nearly a year before Pearl Harbor, he was introduced to the tank at Fort Meade and knew immediately that's what he wanted to do, be a tanker. Following our declaration of war against Germany and Japan, he completed training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and Fort Dixon, New Jersey, and became a tank maintenance sergeant before shipping out to Casablanca and attacking across North Africa to evict Germany from that continent. There he helped train the French 2nd Armored Division and met the provisional president of France, Charles de Gaulle. He then fought to liberate Sicily, Italy, fighting through to Palermo. But Buck and his 70th tank were just getting started. Deploying to England, they were outfitted with a new amphibious M4 Sherman tank and began preparation for the invasion of Normandy at D-Day. He fought with his unit through France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and ended the war in the heart of Germany in the town of Rotenburg. Of the 1,200 original members of the 70th tank, over 700 earned Purple Hearts for wounds in combat. In his words, we lost a lot of very good men. Ladies and gentlemen, at 99 years young, Master Sergeant Buck Isaacs is the last surviving member of the 70th Tank Battalion, or as he says, somewhat gleefully, I'm the last man standing. Sir, we're honored by your service and your presence. Thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Bears, particularly the Oakdale Class of 2021, this is indeed a celebration today. We celebrate these veterans for their decision to serve us, their bravery, and their example. They have given all of us a gift. It's now our responsibility to earn the gift. I'm again reminded of the class motto of the West Point Class of 2017, "So others may dream," 2017. On behalf of our veterans and for what they have done for us, all of you go forth and dream your biggest dream. And in doing so, serve each other and serve these United States of America. God bless you all.
Thank you, Colonel Green. We appreciate your insights. At this time, Sarah Lamar, David Kloss, and Catherine Brennan will sing God Bless. Veterans Day honors all of those who have served, today we cannot forget those who are missing in action or have died in defense of our nation. If you look to the right-hand side of the stage, you will see the small table set for one.
This table is our way of acknowledging those members of our proud profession of arms who are missing in our midst. They are those killed in action, prisoners of war, and those that are listed as missing in action. We call them brothers and sisters. They are unable to be with us this morning, so we remember them through the many symbols on the table.
The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The single rose in the vase reminds us of the families and the loved ones of our comrades in arms who have fallen.
The red ribbon tied so prominently on the vase is reminiscent of the red ribbon worn upon the lapel and breast of thousands who bear witness to the underlying determination to demand a proper accounting of our missing.
A slice of lemon is on the bread plate to remind us of their bitter fate. The salt is symbolic of the tears, theirs and ours.
The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us on this night. The chair is empty. They are not here.
Remember, all of you who have served with them and called them comrade, who depended upon their might and aid and relied upon them, for they have not forgotten you.
At this time, Dr. Scudder would like to say a few words.
Good morning. I would like to thank Colonel Green, our veterans, and members of the Board of Education for joining us today. One of the great joys in mentoring our Veterans Day program is I find myself calling, texting, email dozens of veterans whom I'm privileged to know. Last night I called my old company commander. I haven't served under him for 35 years. We talked for an hour. Sorry, Carol and Steve, I'm going to do it. On Saturday, I swapped several texts with First Lieutenant Kevin Hine, United States Marine Corps, Oak Grove Class of 2013. Lieutenant Hine planned our first Veterans Day program as his leadership project in 2012 with Colleen Bernard as his mentor. Last night, he shared the following insight with me in an email regarding service. Service is sacrificing something of your own, your time, money, or daily comfort, for the benefit of others. When I look at service in this context of the Military and Veterans Day, there is more to it. It is the incredible ability to serve a nation that has afforded its people so many opportunities that cannot be achieved in any other nation. I choose to serve in the military because it gives my life meaning. It is the best way to have a positive effect on the lives of others, especially those who cannot protect themselves. We're truly fortunate to have Lieutenant Hine and 42 other Oakdale alumni serving our nation at this moment. They are our present decade of veterans joining the 8 decades of veterans here with us today. I would also like to thank Intense Barbecue, La Paz, Wegmans for sponsoring this event. I'd also like to thank Katie Calvo, Julia Case, Aubrey Linthicum, Maddie Spencer, and Zach Watkins, Coop Lemley for their various roles in making today a success. Thank you for your service on behalf of those who serve. Thank you all for being here.
Again, we would like to thank Colonel Green and all of our veterans for their service and for joining us today. We will conclude with Sarah Lamar, David Claus, and Catherine Brennan singing the American